all of my videos have been outside, but this one's like outside. I'm like in the woods right now. Like, you can tell by the walking uphill, the bug bites, the track shorts. This isn't working. Let's just do it somewhere else. It's a cool view, but this is impossible. I was actually gonna run this, surprisingly, but there's no way. I would break my ankles, and sure, breaking my ankles would get me some views, but like, these are the only legs I have. I almost died. Oh, I got like 1 million requests to do this book, and by 1 million I mean like 2. I am not that popular. I'm not that serious. But they were just like,
oh hey, you're one of the blacks. You should read this black book that says black girl on the cover. That's what you are. You should read the book because it's about the blacks.
Okay, fine. And the reason why I hesitate to read books like that is because did they ask their white friends to read this book? No, of course they didn't. They asked their white friends to read like The Wheel of Time or something. I'm the one who has to read the books that are about Selma and the books that are about slavery, and it's annoying. Like, is that all I'm supposed to do, is just struggle? Like, do I have struggle on my agenda? I just wake up and be oppressed by the masses and struggle and then go back to sleep? I mean, I did struggle running on this trail. Like, do I look like I don't know about racism? Like, when I was in college, just a couple years ago, I tried to rush with the sorority, and my friend was in it, and me and my other friend were trying to join it, and she goes and asks about Rush Week, and they said,
are you sure you wouldn't be more interested in being an Alpha Kappa Alpha?
My mom wanted to work in agriculture. She wanted to work with animals, but she was driven out of it by the racism. My grandfather was the first black principal at a school in New Jersey, and he basically got driven away from there because of the death threats that he received. My great-grandfather was in World War I, and he brought booze to the sober masses. He was a beloved hero in that sense, and he still had to flee his home right here in the South because of the Klan. And like most people, I don't really know what happens in my family before that. Like, his grandfather before him was probably a slave. So it's no accident that we are in Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Which brings us to John Brown, the Based. He started a slave rebellion, and he came all the way down here to Harper's Ferry, and he took a bunch of people hostage, and he's like, I swear to God, I will not free these hostages if you don't end slavery right now. After he took the hostages, the Marine Corps came in, and instead of doing anything reasonable, they just kind of killed them all. They killed some of the hostages too, and they probably shot some of their damn dogs. It was pretty not based. In fact, it was quite cringe. It's crazy that I worked for them, and a lot of black people have to come to terms with the fact that they work or have worked for an organization that is kind of actually rooted in racism. And sure, we're not, you know, barging down doors and killing Americans who don't like slavery anymore, but you do see some of that subtlety in the workplace. And I started reading The Other Black Girl, and she was talking about navigating these white spaces where you have to really mind their feelings, but they won't bother to mind yours. And that's exhausting to participate in, and it's exhausting to read about. Like, I don't want to read about sad, boring history for the 10 millionth time. As you can see by my presence here, I already know my history. I want to read about horror, and I want to do literary analysis. I want to read about mystery and villains and heroes. And I was in the middle of reading Project Hail Mary when this book was recommended to me. So I'm like, fine, I will read the book. And this book was horror and mystery and literary analysis. Oh my God. Now, the book, like this trail, was a little bit confusing at first. There kept being a bunch of point of view changes, and I didn't understand what they were doing in the beginning. But then the genre of the book changed right before my eyes. The reason why they did these point of view shifts was because the same thing that was happening to her in the present was happening in the past. it went from being this kind of office drama book to being a psychological horror. I was watching her get gaslit over and over again when people left her threatening messages, and when people were excluding her from spaces, and when people were actively sabotaging her ability to work in this place. And the same thing happened 40 years ago, and they did it so much to the woman 40 years ago that she went insane, and it ruined her reputation. Or at least from the point of view of other people, she was insane. That's how gaslighting works, I suppose. And it's a type of gaslighting that I can definitely kind of relate to. Like, there were so many instances in this story in which I was like, has this author been like a telepath and just stalking me for the past like 10 years of my working adult life? And it kind of goes to show that there's sort of a new horror trope in town. It had similar vibes to Get Out. They're portraying bigotry not as this sad, boring thing that only existed in the past, but they're portraying it as this nebulous and difficult to see and difficult to fathom monster. It's almost Lovecraftian. We like to think of tropes as being something that's as old as storytelling itself. We think of damsel in distress, found family, hero's journey, stuff that they were literally talking about in ancient Greek stories. It's not the first new trope either. When you think about it, jump scares have only existed since movies, and dick jokes are relatively new because it's a relatively new concept to even acknowledge that dicks exist. But here we have a new trope that's being invented by people who are given a new voice. This trope of bigotry as the cosmic horror is probably the direction that Black media is going in this time, and it's so refreshingly different than the tragedy of it. So yeah, thank you for joining me on my hike.